I've been thinking a lot about something over the last couple of years, and I wanted to share it with you. I've been a couples therapist for more than 30 years, and I've had this experience over and over again of couples coming in pretty high conflict and not really being able to feel like I had enough time to get it done. A session is 45, maybe 50 minutes with a therapist. And so frequently it takes that amount of time to get the couple to open up and to really surrender into the process of being vulnerable, of speaking their minds freely, and of maybe trying to create some solution or resolution. Even if you do a double session and you see a couple for 90 to 110 minutes, how do you really make sure that they leave better? Mother Teresa said, don't come to me unless you can leave better. That is the intention, is always to make sure that our clients leave better. And so frequently I feel like we can open up in the session, but there's never really enough time to create solution. You might open up a conflict that's been stirring for 10 years, and the next thing you know, they're yelling, they're screaming, and even if I wear really good black and white stripes, they're leaving still in conflict, right? Now they're not even protected, right? Now the couple's leaving the office in live conflict. Then they go home. I'm not there. Even if I'm at the other end of the phone or available by text, I'm not there, and the conflict gets worse. So, I've seen so many couples, and just recently I've sat with a couple clients, and I felt my heart really breaking because it felt like there wasn't enough time. And there wouldn't even have been enough time with the double session. And as I began to ponder, how do I stop this? How do I stop my own madness as a therapist, and as a coach? How do I move couples up and out of, very unhealthy communication or distant connection or disconnection? How do I move them through that into a space of breakthrough and reunification or reunion? So I've actually designed a whole series of couples VIP days. It starts with a couples half day, goes to a couples VIP day, there's a couples overnight, and then there's a couples weekend. And the reason I came up with this idea was so that each of you who are in that space, or maybe you've tested therapy before, you've gone into the therapist's office and you've spent that 45 minutes or an hour or even 2 hours, and you've left no better. Or even if you've left with a better understanding of how things are with your spouse or your partner, you haven't left with a solution. You haven't come away feeling better. Then isn't it smart of us, isn't it wise of us to look at how we want to have any couple start a therapeutic process or a coaching process unless they knew that there was an achievable goal. My goal is not to have couples come in and simply take your money and hope that we can come up with a solution. My goal is to help you redesign your relationship, reignite your passion, reawaken your desire for one another, or at least to increase your clarity about what it is you want from one another. In a breakthrough day, we have the time and space. We have 4 hours, we have 8 hours, we have 10 or 12 hours to do the work without the time pressures. We have the time to open up things, to explore them, to discover where are the solutions, where are the problems, what's possible. And even if what we uncover in the process of 4, 8, 10, 12, 20 hours is that the relationship has to change. And it might even be that the relationship has to change into an entirely different thing, then that's an opportunity. Because it's hard for me to engage with others and feel like there's nothing I can do. Perhaps people see therapists as this sort of almighty, like, oh, you've got this, your life's perfect, you're not living this drama. But what? I have lived a lot of that drama. I bring empathy and compassion to the table, and it hurts my heart when I think I can sit with a couple and I can't do anything about it, or there's not enough time. A lot of people know that for me, when I contract with a couple, I see them for 3 months at a time, because unless we can sit for at least 3 months together, we're not going to get anything done. But more often than not, couples come, they unbundle, they get vulnerable, but then it's time to wrap them back up and send them back home to the very triggers that have been such a struggle in the first place. So being able to take the time and space to have a greater flexibility, a greater openness, a greater sense of time without the limitations and constraints. That to me is creating space for solution. So think about where you are. Think about your relationships. Do you feel like maybe you've stopped communicating? And if so, why? Is it the language? Do you understand love languages, right? We all have different love languages. Are you speaking the same language? Did you ever? Could that change? Could you learn? Could you learn to be bilingual with your partner? In terms of if they believe that their heart swells with acts of service, can you learn to do acts of service even though you're a person who would rather speak your praise, speak your honor, speak your respect for your partner? Can your partner do the same with you? If you are able to communicate and you think you're communicating pretty well, maybe that's not the area that you struggle with. Maybe it's connecting when there's conflict. Do you lean in or do you lean away? And listen, we all have baggage. We all have reasons why we might not do that in relationship. I look at my history and I think, gosh, it's hard for me with a history of trauma to lean in when there's conflict, especially if the conflict is loud. I've never been great with loud voices. I'm not great with people who yell. It doesn't have to be at me. I want to run. I want to get the heck out of there. But part of resolving conflict is learning to lean in instead of lean away. So even looking for what are the tools that are necessary in order to lean in rather than away. If that's not your struggle, if you communicate really clearly with your partner and you feel like when the going gets tough, the tough get going and you're leaning in together, what about the passion? Do you make time for one another? Do you feel like you can be intense with one another and sexual with one another? Do you create the space for that? If you've got kids or fur kids or work, do you create the space that's needed to tend that garden? How many of us can get derailed by work and family and friends and yada, 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 politics, the TV, the shows. Okay, yeah, it happens. So what are you going to do to reignite that flame? Can you? Will you? Are you willing? Is there anything getting in the way of that process? So creating the space to take that time together is what it's about. Because otherwise you walk away or you run away and then you reinvent it all again with the next person. So if you're interested in perhaps reviewing any of that in a way that might actually work, check out Sage Wisdom Institute or Sage Breslin PhD on Facebook, or take a look at my links and check out some of the breakthrough VIP days for couples. Well, I've got other things to offer, but right now my heart is just really swelling with solution for couples and wanting people to really experience what it's like to reawaken or reignite the passion in a relationship. And it can be done if you take the time and you put the energy into it. This is your Wisdom Wednesday, and I'm looking forward to seeing you really soon. Have a great day and a great rest of the week. Thanks for tuning in.